Welcome to the deep dive. Buckle up, because today we're diving into something seriously weird, a really mind-bending idea about consciousness, physics, the whole shebang. We're working from some excerpts, basically, from a podcast called Planck Brains, Consciousness at the Edge of Physics, and that source, it pulls from some heavy hitters, thinkers like Carlo Rovelli, Sean Carroll, Stuart Hameroff, Roger Penrose, Don Page. So our mission today, we want to unpack this. It's a pretty provocative concept. Could consciousness just, pop into existence from space-time itself, right at the tiniest possible level? What does that even mean? Let's get into it.
Okay, yeah. Before we can even talk about consciousness popping up, we need to understand where it might be topping up from. We need to talk about the absolute smallest scale imaginable in physics, the Planck scale.
Right.
It's basically the boundary, the absolute limit where our current understanding of physics kind of falls apart. It's where quantum mechanics, the physics of the very small meets gravity, the physics of the very large. They have to unify there.
So, below that scale, space and time as we know them, they just don't work the same way.
Exactly. They cease to apply in the way we intuitively understand them. Something fundamentally different must be happening. And the scale, it's hard to even wrap your head around. The Planck length, it's about 1.6 times 10 to the minus 35 meters. I mean, vanishingly small.
Wow.
And Planck time, the smallest tick of the cosmic clock, is roughly 5.4 times 10 to the minus 44 seconds. Just incredibly brief. It's named after Max Planck, of course, who really kicked off quantum theory.
Father, quantum theory, yeah.
And down there, space-time isn't this smooth, continuous sheet. The sources suggest it might be, well, discrete. Choppy. Some people describe it as foamy, quantum foam.
Foamy?
Yeah, like the underlying structure is chaotic and fluctuating wildly. Classical ideas just break down completely. Perhaps something entirely new emerges from that foam.
I like that analogy from the source material, thinking of it as the pixel resolution of the universe. We can't zoom in any further.
That's a great way to put it. And below that resolution, well, that's where things get really weird.
Okay, so this fundamental weirdness, this quantum foam at the Planck scale, that's the fertile ground for this next idea, right? The Planck brain hypothesis.
Precisely. It springs from that very weirdness.
And it's related, I gather, to the Boltzmann brain idea, that paradox.
It is. It's a specific, maybe even more extreme version of it. The core hypothesis put forward by people like Sean Carroll is this. If the universe, or maybe a multiverse, exists for an absolutely immense amount of time.
Like truly cosmic timescales.
Right. Unimaginable timescales.
Huh?
Then random quantum fluctuations, these little jitters in the quantum foam, could, just purely by chance, assemble themselves into complex structures.
Okay.
And one possible structure, however unlikely it seems to us, is something complex enough to be self-aware. A pattern of information that thinks, basically a brain.
A brain from random fluctuations.
Yes. And a Planck brain is the idea of such a mind, not evolving over billions of years like ours, but forming instantly, spontaneously, just popping out of these quantum fluctuations right near the Planck scale.
Instantly.
And here's the really provocative bit, the part that makes it a paradox. The argument goes that statistically, over these vast, vast time scales, these fleeting, instantaneous Planck brains might actually be, well, more probable.
Wait. More probable than us? Than evolved lifelike? Like everything we see around us?
That's the claim. That a momentary flash of a brain-like structure in the quantum foam could be statistically favored over the incredibly long, complex, and seemingly fine-tuned process of cosmic evolution, star formation, planet formation, abiogenesis, and biological evolution that led to us.
That really messes with your intuition, doesn't it? It's like the universe dreaming up a brain for a fraction of a second.
That totally.
A quantum hallucination, like the source says, but one that actually thinks it's real.
Exactly. It's deeply counterintuitive.
And this whole idea, it bumps right up against the other huge mystery, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Consciousness itself. What is this subjective awareness we all have? And could it somehow be tied into quantum physics?
Absolutely. That's a crucial link explored in the sources. There are several quantum theories of mind floating around.
Right. Like what?
Well, some ideas, like those from Penrose and Hameroff, suggest consciousness might involve quantum coherence, large-scale, synchronized quantum effects happening inside, say, microtubules within brain neurons.
Okay, so quantum stuff happening in the brain.
Yeah. Others speculate that the act of observation, the collapse of the quantum wave function, where possibilities become definite, might itself be linked to subjective awareness.
The observer effect, but maybe connected to being an observer.
Kind of. And then you have things like integrated information theory, or IIT. That one treats consciousness less as a biological fluke and more as an intrinsic property of any system, biological or not, that integrates information in a sufficiently complex way.
Information itself being conscious, potentially.
In a structured way, yes.
Right.
So these theories usually talk about biological brains, right?
Yeah.
But the Planck brain idea forces a really fundamental question.
Which is,
If consciousness is fundamentally about information processing or quantum phenomena, could those principles apply outside of biology? Could a non-biological system, like a temporary pattern in quantum fluctuations, also be conscious, even if just for an instant?
yeah, that's the core of it, leading to that question from the source. If consciousness is information, what happens when the universe thinks? Which, leads directly to the really uncomfortable question.
Could we be Planck brains?
Exactly. How do we know we're not?
Right. And that's the philosophical core of the Boltzmann brain problem, which the Planck brain idea inherits. If these spontaneous, fleeting, conscious entities are, statistically speaking, way more likely than stable, evolved observers like us in certain cosmological models,
Then the odds might suggest.
the odds might suggest that any random observer pulling itself from the void, which would include us, if we are observers, is more likely to be one of those fleeting fluctuations, complete with implanted false memories of a past, than a real evolved being.
Okay, but surely physicists don't actually think we are Planck brains, right?
No, generally not. Most physicists see this as a reductio ad absurdum, a sign that the cosmological models predicting this outcome, often ones involving infinite space or eternal inflation, have a serious problem. If your model predicts that your own observations are unreliable, then the model undermines itself.
So it's a paradox to be avoided, not a description of reality.
Correct. It highlights potential flaws in our understanding of cosmology or statistical mechanics on cosmic scales,
Yeah.
but it does force us to ask some deep questions, which the sources emphasize. Like, what actually governs the probability of consciousness emerging anywhere? Is there some principle in the universe that selects for stable, complex, evolved minds like ours? Or is it just a numbers game, a cosmic lottery spitting out random conscious moments?
I mean, can a flash of awareness that lasts for, 10 to the minus 44 seconds, can that even be a mind? Does it count?
That's a huge philosophical question, isn't it? What are the necessary conditions for personhood, for a self? Can it exist without duration, without memory formation in the conventional sense?
It makes you look at your own continuous stream of consciousness and think, could this seemingly solid reality be something else? Something much more fragile or probabilistic?
Exactly. It pushes us into some really profound philosophical territory.
So broadening out. What are the big implications if something like Planck brains, even just theoretically, could exist?
Well, it fundamentally challenges our concept of selfhood. What does it mean to be a person or have an identity if your entire existence is shorter than the time it takes light to cross a proton? Does that consciousness have value? Does it experience anything meaningful?
Hard to imagine.
Then there's the nature of reality itself. Are we embedded in a solid, continuous physical history? Or is our perceived reality just one incredibly unlikely but stable fluctuation in a sea of chaotic, momentary possibilities? Could our past be just a very convincing illusion generated this instant?
That's the Boltzmann brain worry again. Very unsettling.
Deeply unsettling. And it forces us to confront our sort of biological bias. Is a wet biological brain the only possible home for consciousness?
Or could awareness arise in totally different forms?
Perhaps. Maybe in fundamental quantum fields, as the Planck brain idea suggests in its most extreme form. Or maybe in complex computational systems, the realm of strong AI research exploring substrate-independent minds. Could consciousness be realized in silicon? Or in quantum foam?
It leads back to that reflection you mentioned from the source.
Yeah.
Maybe the universe isn't a machine or a mind, but a mind that makes machines. That's a lot to chew on.
It really is. The Planck brain concept, as bizarre and frankly unlikely as it seems as a description of us, is incredibly powerful as a thought experiment, a philosophical probe.
Pushing the boundaries of physics and philosophy.
Absolutely. It makes us ask, is consciousness this incredibly special, rare thing needing billions of years of evolution? Or is it perhaps a potential property woven into the very fabric of reality, flickering in and out of existence all the time in the quantum chaos?
So just to recap this wild ride, we've looked at the Planck scale, that ultimate boundary of physics. We've explored the strange idea of Planck brains consciousness spontaneously emerging from quantum fluctuations. We touched on how this connects to quantum theories of mind and that deeply weird question about whether we could be such fleeting entities.
And maybe the final thought to leave you with, pulling from these ideas, is just the scale of our ignorance, really. We don't fundamentally know if consciousness is locked into biology, or if it could theoretically arise from pure chaos. Are we stable observers in a predictable cosmos, or are we something much stranger? And if these fleeting Planck brains do flicker in the quantum foam, are they just cosmic noise? Or are they, in some incomprehensible way, observers too?
Huge questions. Definitely gives you something to think about long after this deep dive ends. Thanks for exploring this with us.